On this week's episode of the Peach Life Podcast, we are joined by Nate Murphy. Come along as we talk about how he got into van life as a tool to live adventurously and what it took to restore an old building during lockdown. Please join us each week as we talk to inspiring and creative individuals and learn just how big living tiny can really be. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Peach Life Podcast. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for new episodes each week. Okay, well, thank you so much, Nate, for joining me on the podcast today. I really appreciate it, man. I'm super excited for this, and I've been looking forward to hopefully having you on since before I even started the podcast. So this is
Nice.
Yeah, it's an exciting day for me. So yeah, I mean, let's just kind of starting from the beginning. How did you get into van life?
I got into van life pretty much as like a practical tool so I could spend more time climbing. So I was on a trip and I sort of stayed in Airbnb a bit, and then I was backpacking, and my aim was to come back to Europe, do a van, and then use that as like a way to live like a low-cost lifestyle, making my savings go further, and then basically just go climbing all the time. That was like the primary goal of going into van life. I didn't like research it a lot. It was just like, this is what climbers do. This is a great idea. I'll do that. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay, that's awesome. For people, when they get on the road, there's so many different ways or reasons why people, end up getting on the road. Some it's just to, get out with time with their family. Some people like yourself, it's really kind of to be closer to nature, closer to the adventure. And I really love seeing that. It's one of the things I've loved about your channel is that you kind of were able to really get a good mixture of the kind of outdoor adventure lifestyle and really bring that kind of together with the van life and things like that. With building your van, did you have much construction experience before that?
Not specifically in building a van. But I did have a degree in industrial design. So in terms of actually making things, understanding electronics and systems and stuff like that, I was reasonably well versed and also very good at like planning and putting it together. So in that sense, I was sort of trained in some way, but I hadn't ever built a van before. So in some sense, I wasn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things with vans. The more I've talked to some people that have built them that are so much more complicated than other builds, just because there's every inch you do something, it costs somewhere else. Like it's such a small kind of footprint that you have to make everything work in. So I imagine it's especially being the first time, it's always
there's a lot of trade-offs, and then in terms of like you want one thing, you can have another, but then as you do the process, there's a lot of dependencies. Like you have to have some things done like the skylights or the windows or before you can put the insulation in and other structures. So you have to be quite good at thinking ahead and planning. I think that's probably one of like quite a good skill set I have in general. So for me, that meant I could and I wanted to do it really quickly because I just wanted to get climbing. I don't want to spend ages building a van. So I basically, it was like the ordering phases and then the construction phases. And if you get your head around that, then you can be quite efficient. Otherwise, you might end up undoing things and that type of thing, which can make your van build really drag out.
Yeah, you did yours incredibly fast. Like it was 17 days.
Yeah, it was 17 really full-on days. But I was I get super psyched for like physical construction sort of things. Like with if it's like online work or something, like it's kind of like doesn't exist, it's not tangible. But if I've got like stuff in my hand and I'm making it and I can see it's not finished, I'll just work myself to death almost. Like it's not healthy. I'll just like get obsessed. And I'll work 15-hour days and then like 4 hours ordering stuff online and then like 15-hour day like every day. I just get obsessed with the physical thing because it's like instant results and it's quite addictive in that way.
Yeah, and once you get into the project, when at some point your whole life gets wrapped up into a project, you know, and the only thing that you can kind of see is just trying to get to the finish line of, you know, of whatever project that is.
Yeah, and I think it's really really takes up a lot of your mind space, because you're building something and there's always like a problem you have to solve, like how do I fit this thing here and this cupboard door open, and you know, they're all the interaction within your van. And then if you go to sleep, you're just thinking about that, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, this is my problem, thinking about that. So really, I think it really absorbs your head, especially if you're kind of building intensely.
Yeah, it really does. With kind of your story with climbing and wanting to kind of get, you know, obviously get the van done as fast as you can, you know, in order to kind of just get out, get on the road, get to some spots. How have you seen that kind of open up your life, and maybe for other people out there that are, whether it's climbers, snowboarders, people that are trying to get out, you know, through hikers, people that are just trying to get out there? What are some of the things for yourself that you saw kind of opened up that freedom?
I think like the biggest part of it is that a van in my mind is like a really useful tool, and it doesn't work for all people's hobbies or potential careers or whatever it is, but for a whole bunch of things it's like perfect, because it takes you to places and your costs are incredibly low. So rather than like needing to save for like Airbnb or hotel or car rental, it's all wrapped up in one, and it's like super cheap. You know, you have to buy the thing, but if you do a good job, you can sell the thing in 3 years' time for a profit, or at least break even. It's free, so it's kind of a free thing if you build it yourself and you do a decent job, and it's not, you know, a total rust junk which, you know, you're gonna have to scrap in a few years. But so if you do that, then okay, you have to do the outlay, you have to buy the thing. And to be fair, like I know people who've bought like relatively cheap vans, they spent $1,000 on it, and then they live their dream. But the big thing in my mind for me was, it's just like financial freedom. It takes like the wolf away from the door. Well, it's only a very small wolf, because instead of spending like £2,000 or like $2,500 a month living in a city, and suddenly you're spending like, you know, $500 a month. I mean, that depends on how much you drive. Some people spend that on fuel every month, but for me, it's like I go to a climbing destination, I park up, and I barely move for a month, and then I go to the next one. So it was just super cheap way to live, and you're like, all right, now I didn't have to work so much. And you know, I've always done bits of consulting work or whatever, and now, you know, a few days of like helping someone do some kind of brand strategy or whatever, pays for like 2 months of like living in a van doing what the hell I want. Like it's, you know, it just drastically reduces your costs. That means you can do the thing you're passionate about for longer. For me, maybe it's like climbing or making YouTube videos. And that in turn gives those things a higher chance of success, because you better focus on them for longer. Like I got much better climber, or like my videos I spend more time on, which meant and initially they didn't make money for a year, and I wasn't even thinking about making money with it, but I could just do it because I wasn't having to work all the time, and that led to all sorts of things in my life, which I'm super grateful for.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about, I guess, a lot of the people that may have started, you know, quite a few years ago with van life or bus life before it was even a huge thing. And a lot of them, it seems like it ended up being a year or two before you started realizing like, oh, you can make money off of this. You can, you know, find ways to support yourself doing that on the road. And for people that are looking, maybe for people that are looking for the future and thinking that that's something they'd like to do, whether it's bus life or van life or a tiny home, what about like preparing, as far as, do you have, you know, because you see people, you can buy a van that's, like you were saying, like 1,000, a couple thousand, and I've seen people spend, you know, a couple thousand to live in a van, and I've seen people spend 200,000 for a van. And same thing, like you were saying, with gas and how much you know, people travel around. There is the ability to live as cheap as you want, and to kind of, you know, go, it can kind of get out of hand as well. So there's a lot of room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sorry, go on. Sorry, you lead the question. I just moved my phone to a better hotspot.
Yeah, no, just I was just thinking about like how, you know, there really is the the lowest end and the highest end that people are able to. And I like that one thing you really preach well is kind of bringing your bills down, bringing your costs down, live as cheap as you can. And because I think for me, that's the important part, is how do you get your bills down to get more freedom in life? And then as you go from there, you're able to kind of expand and grow.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a big thing. I mean, I do love with the general van life thing is like it's super diverse. You know, there's people who literally they just realize they can't afford to retire, which is like it's gutting when you hear the stories and you're like, shit, they just can't retire. But they sell up or they rent their house out and they live in a van and they travel around, and it just gives them that breathing space. They can afford to like live a bit in their old age, and that's one end. People were basically in it because it's like the only real option they've realized they have, not to just work until they drop. This especially it's a lot more in America because it's just less social support. And then you have people who are just like got loads of money and it's like, well, I just want a holiday on the weekend in my van. You know, it's just like this huge range of people who are like doing it for the reasons. You have sports and athletes and surfers, and then you have people who just are like artists and creatives. I literally just on the phone for an hour to a friend who's a full-time working artist. She's just finishing her second van, and then with a van she wants to do this like way of like selling art as she travels, and it just enables her to focus more on her art. And therefore, actually, ironically, she'll leave, live in her van, focus on her art, and then probably have a higher chance of actually like making it with as an artist, because she doesn't have to do so much commercial art. She can do the kind of the more conceptual or like art which has meaning, which will get her representation. So it's like, yeah, it's super diverse, it's super interesting, and many people do it for many different reasons, and they're all generally super valid.
Yeah, with your channel now, you've interviewed and will kind of done tours of a ton of different vehicles now. Are there some kind of things you've noticed over the years, some common mistakes, or maybe some things that just really work well inside vans particularly?
It's a question. I mean, I think like in my opinion, no one regrets having a heater in their van. Like, it depends where you live, obviously, to some extent. But in Europe, almost everywhere in Europe, it gets cold. That's at least 2 months of the year. It's pretty freaking cold. And having a heater when it's cold I think really like, because you've got loads of different layouts and structures and kitchen systems and blah blah blah. Like, that's like almost in my mind, it's a little bit like that's the superficial. Really, if you're going to spend time in your van, like full-time van life, if you're holidaying, like, people go camping on holiday. Camping is like, van life is like amazing camping. Like, like it rains and you're just like huddled in a tent making some like horrible meal in a thermos or something. But like, make like all the different layouts and systems and bed things and garages, like it's all well and good. But really, like, you want to be able to be comfortable, you want to be warm and dry, the things that like you need from shelter. And having a heater it's just gold. Like, to be able to have 2 buttons and then you suddenly have like warm van, dry van, it's really important. And then
are you talking about a secondary heater that's not the heater from the van itself, but actual secondary system?
Yeah, like a propane heater or a diesel heater. I mean, there's a whole bunch. Usually, it's usually got to be something based on gas or diesel because the amount of energy required. But in my general experience, people who have gone without a heater and they end up in places which are cold, they regret it. Because the only way to get warm then is like either fire up the engine, that sucks, or like try and make tea endlessly. But it's not the same. You just turn on a heater, your van's dry. You can even dry your clothes out in the place. It makes a huge deal to your living space if you're going to coldish places.
Yeah, and I would imagine all over Europe, I mean, at some points of the year that you're definitely gonna need that. And even most places here in the States, I mean, I know you can kind of chase the weather here, and that's what most of the people do, which is a great thing that there is the ability to do that. But yeah, having the right kind of heat and AC in any small living situation is so huge.
Yeah, I mean, even in like, I was in New Mexico in, like November a couple of years ago, and like it's minuses at night. I mean, centigrade minuses. I don't know how it works in Fahrenheit, but it's cold, right? And like, yeah, it's just the option to be able to heat your van, in my opinion, is a good investment. The problem is like when I was doing my van, I was like, oh man, it's like quite expensive because I put in a gas system, but then you need like a refillable bottle because it's obviously going to run out faster. So you need like this, you can fill up at a gas station. And then it's like the heater and then the filler hose. And it's like about, $800 more, $900 more, which is quite a big chunk of extra cash in your conversion. And I was just thinking like every girlfriend I've ever had is always cold, some like way colder than I am. And I can just imagine them with like every like down jacket, every layer for like a month being grumpy. And like you can literally fix it by going click on a heater. It's just that's paid off like 1,000 times. So yeah, it just makes it comfortable.
Yeah, it seems like one to not skimp on for sure. I know for us when we built the studio here, we had a heater that we just had loved, that we had in our RV, and so when I did this, I had to make sure I bought another one of those because it was just such a good purchase and makes life so much more comfortable.
Yeah. Who would have thought heating in houses is a good thing? Yeah, and then other than that, yeah, like you want good water systems and things like that. And really, then it's just, to me, it's like the fundamentals, like good insulation, do that properly, have a way to keep your van warm when it's cold, and then like a decent solar rig so that your heater will continue to work in the middle of winter. And for me, that's like the basics. You cover that, then you can be comfortable wherever you're kind of traveling or living van life or whatever.
Yeah, it's gotta be nice having that freedom to just have every convenient and comforts at your fingertips wherever you go. The second you pull up somewhere, you have your bed, your house, your kitchen, your garage, all that stuff kind of wrapped into one. So
Absolutely.
I want to talk about your the project you're just finishing now with the house. I mean, that's obviously been kind of a big thing you've been doing over the last, it's been a while now. And yeah, how was that project for you? How did you kind of get into deciding, hey, let's buy I don't even know what like an old estate, I mean, is kind of the best way I would say it.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, like it all came from, I'm traveling my van. I love van life, totally happy with it. But I really wanted like some workshop space to create things. Like I wanted like just like somewhere where I can have some machines to. I was making like a climbing product at the time, and I wanted to have a place where I can create art or whatever. So I was like, initially, I just want some space, and I was looking, and if I'm going to get it, I want it in like a really cool climbing area. But where I was looking, I just couldn't find, like, I was looking for industrial units, like a little warehouse type thing, which I could like, insulate or convert, put a toilet and a shower in, and have it as like a van life base. So like all my mates could come and hang at the van life base, but I've also got a workshop and studio space, and it's like a great place for climbers and dirt bags. But basically, I just couldn't, like, it's a bit bureaucratic. I couldn't find the right place. It was really difficult, and it didn't work out. So I'm like, okay, well, I still want this. So maybe I'll like rent a house, but like I just didn't. I felt bad, like the idea of renting a house if I'm only there for 6 months a year and paying for the whole time. So So in the end, I was like, well, sod it. I'll buy a house. And then, but obviously, if you're going to buy a house, like it's a slower property market here. You can't just instantly release your house by selling it in a week or two. So I was like, well, if I'm going to buy somewhere, I want somewhere which is like kind of useful long term and like with space to grow into. And in the end, I found this place through some friends, and I was like, okay, well, I do a quick renovation on it, and yeah, and then that's how I got into it. I just wanted some space to do work, and I ended up with a whole renovation project. And basically, I bought this house. It's like a house. It's a big barn, and it's a bit of land, basically, in the Catalonian mountains. It's like super freaking beautiful. Like out my window, there's like world-class climbing crags in this area. There's more climbing than you can do in your lifetime. It's more climbing. It's an amazing place. And then basically, yeah, I just got to work, and it took like 6 weeks to clear it. I went back to the UK. I built another van, came back out here with my planning permission sorted. Yeah, and then I spent 4 months building, a couple months away because it's too cold to building inside the house doing electrics, and then another 8 months. So it's like of building work, not clearance. It was like 12 months of 6 days a week, 12-hour days. Just basically worked myself until parts of my beard fell out, which is not ideal, but like I just, again, it's like I just like wanted to finish it. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've done for the last year.
Okay. And did you start that completely before the pandemic and then kind of had to just roll with that through that whole situation and the kind of uncertainty with that?
Yeah, so before the pandemic, I had 4 months where like did the roof, all the big openings, like a load of like the really major stuff, basically. And then when we came back, we went to like Cuba, Mexico, just like chilled out. It was cold and house not with no heat in. It's horrible to do the work there. So like left, and also after 4 months of like heavy work where you're just like moving tons of concrete every day, I was knackered, like I needed a break. And then basically when I came back, it was like early March, and then Spain went into lockdown mid-March, basically. So I came back, I started to work, and I like panic bought as much as I could when I realized what's going to happen. And then I was working since then. It was the whole time it's pandemic conditions, which the first months were like really difficult to order stuff. You couldn't actually go to shop. So I had like 15 different projects where like I go until I ran out of material. I don't have a shower tray, so now I do the next bit. And it was just basically like going as far as I could until I could get a particular piece of material, or maybe a delivery arrived and deliveries just weren't working. Yeah, it's a real nuisance, actually.
Yeah. All the stuff for us was like that as well. Home Depot was open, and so that was luckily near us. But as far as any other thing I had to order online, it was just a nightmare. So much of the stuff was held up for like months.
Yeah. I had a shower tray which took like 3 months to arrive, and in the end it didn't arrive. I got another one and got to cancel the order. It was just
that's what I had to do. Yeah, I ordered a whole shower system that I had to like after a month. Like, oh no, we don't know when it's going to be back in order or when they're going to ship. I'm like, you know what? Let's just cancel it. I went to Home Depot and had to buy some basically like custom stuff you could do and like basically just do a whole custom fabrication for the inside of a shower because I couldn't get one anywhere for our RV.
Yeah. I mean, it was it was a real pain. I mean, like I just had to like make do with a lot of stuff. But like also that's like the negative, but the positive is I had like I couldn't do anything else. Like Spain was locked down like to your house. You can't leave your house unless you've got a really good reason. It was like that lockdown. Like so basically no one's going climbing, no one's going van trips. Like, well, it was just like an ideal massive lockdown project. I mean, like not ideal in like the ordering and all that stuff, but it was ideal in the fact that like what better time to like just spend 12 hours a day, 6 days a week just building a house when you literally can't do anything else. So yeah, there's an upside, sort of weird crappy silver clouds lining, whatever it is.
Yeah, there definitely was an upside for a lot of people. I see a lot of different people kind of make kind of a big jump that they might have waited a couple of years. I think a lot of people that I've seen and talked to kind of had that, hey, well, while we're in uncertain times, let's just kind of go for it. Whether it's, buying property and building a cabin or, building a van, whatever it is, it's just, I think there's been a lot more of that this last year with people kind of having some more time.
Well, interestingly, in summer, like our channel had the best views we've ever had, basically, and that's largely, I think, to do with like in the initial part of lockdown, especially in Europe, van life was like a real problem for people who were like full-time van lifers because technically they couldn't go anywhere. They were like illegal everywhere. They couldn't be on the roads. It was like a real problem for people. But then by the time summer came, it was the only way you could have a holiday and actually socially distance. Like everyone super interested in vans because it's like, oh, you just no hotel, no check-in, no nothing. You just get in your van, you go to the supermarket, you get your stuff, and now you just go to nature and you don't have to see or talk to a single person if you don't want to. And that's like, incredible. And I think when we come out of lockdown, there's going to be a lot of people who they could still work. They were able to save money because they couldn't spend on anything because all the restaurants were shut. And I think there's going to be an explosion. Well, there's going to be an explosion of travel, and I think that's going to impact van life. People are just going to be like, you know what, I can do it. I'm going to do it. Like when people are suppressed about anything, and then suddenly you open those gates, then I think it's going to go a bit crazy. which, you know, will have its challenges. We need to, as you know, with a channel, we're seeing it as our, like, part of our responsibility to encourage responsible van life. So we started a series on responsible van life, to try and educate the newcomers, because we don't want to impact the places we visit really negatively. So yeah, it's kind of down to us as a community to help educate people how to get to a toilet, how not to piss off the local people, all these things, and just try and keep van life or maintain some kind of reputation when it does go a little bit mad.
Yeah. How do you see the future of van life and schooly life, and like, you know, where do you see this kind of going?
I think it's still growing. If you look at Google Trends, at least it's still growing. I think it's gonna grow quite a lot after the pandemic, and I think there's also going to be some negative consequences of even more popular van life, because people will try to keep going to the same places they've seen on Instagram and blah blah blah, and those places will impact, and that will potentially, if people aren't responsible, that will come into like little local, whatever you call them in America, where council or community says like, oh, we have a law, you can't park there. They put the signs up and those signs never come down. So that's what I'm mostly worried about, is that as van life grows, and I think it's wonderful that people can experience that freedom and the ability to pursue the things they want to do. But I do worry that if too many people do it and there's not enough voice to the responsible part of van life, not just like Instagram snaps of, you know, whatever, looking out at a beach, like there could be a negative downside where, you know, overnight camping is banned in a lot more places, and that will affect, you know, generations of people, because those rules don't roll back.
Yeah, yeah, and that's definitely true. Now, I can't speak for over there in Europe, but I mean, where we are, even here in California, it's the restrictions I've seen over the last 5 to 10 years have, you know, gotten, I would say that they've gotten worse and worse. Now, luckily, there's been some good resources that have opened up, like, you know, Campendium, campsites.net, a bunch of different ones that have kind of helped people find those resources and kind of created an ecosystem of giving people kind of places that they can stay. I know, you know, obviously here in the kind of the, I don't want to say the Southwest because we're in Northern California, but kind of that area of the region, there's, you know, obviously a lot more places, but California is getting worse and worse about, you know, kind of those overnight camping, overnight places that you can stay and things like that. With how have
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was.
go for it.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it comes down to a lot of like general social issues and attitudes where, you know, like I think in some ways there's a safety in America, because like the Great American Road Trip is something that like a lot of like older people, they aspire to. It's like, we're gonna like get this big RV and we're gonna see the national parks, and like that's great, because like you can't take away too many things from these people, because they're like really, fair it is, they got money, but like they're you know, I think to some extent there's going to be issues always, because what van life represents is it's not the normal, it's alternative, and people like everything to be the same and not do what they do. And you know, you have to pay the $1 million to have that view, not just park outside my house on the beachfront. You know, like people don't like it when people maybe have a shortcut to a fun time without paying the price of capitalism, whatever, you know, like,
Yeah.
and that's a problem. And I think basically, really in the long term, I didn't know the answer, but probably it's got to come within a growing van life community of people who are like, you know, there's loads of people like they got serious jobs and they're digital nomads, or they're like, they work corporate life and they spend 3 months a year doing a thing. It's got to be like a cross-cultural like way of like preventing stupid draconian laws, which are just stopping the dirty poor people who are parking outside in the fancy place. Like, you know, we've got to somehow, the answers have got to probably come within the van life community, because no one else is probably going to advocate for it. And I think it's, you know, it's a lot of like the freedom of people to do what they want in your country. And a lot of countries will say, you know, like, we're all for freedom, the rest of it, but as long as it's exactly the freedom that we want you to have, you know. And it's like, we got to push back on that at some point from the legislative level. I don't really know the answer for that because it's like a worldwide thing. And there are a lot of problems in quite a lot of places.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean the more something, like you said, the more something grows, the more regulated it gets. And there's no telling where it's going, but I'm very happy with the growth that I see, and that I think people are figuring out even more creative ways, whether it's people buying properties and, having places like, even like yourself, like finding, hey, I need a home base. Cause I think even for people that travel full time, having a home base is still, really important, and I think critical for people that can. And a lot of times, half the time, like even for us right now, our home base is the side of my parents' house. So, and some people it's that, some people are able to, either own a home and rent out their home, like we were saying, like while they're on the road. But the freedom inside of that is wide open. And I think that there's, been a lot of change over the last few years, and a lot of growth from people like yourself, some of the, other channels that are really promoting this. But also, I like that you're promoting it in a responsible way. I like that you are kind of taking on that challenge of being the one that's, kind of hoping to, like you're saying, help other people out there maybe get into it, but also be respectful, plan in advance, prepare, and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a responsible van life. I think it's such a broad topic. It's partly, like just don't like financially making sure you're okay and you have some kind of healthcare thing, which is more of the thing in the States. Or if it's just like not impacting the community. And the thing is, I mean, one of the big problems with the community aspect is they see loads of van people come and they're like, those people don't give us any money. Like, that's the problem. I mean, it's this is a social problem, because it's like, well, people aren't valuable unless they pay money. And then, but you can kind of arbitrate that. You can like use their local cafes. You can try and make a point that they know, like, oh yeah, we're touring through in our van and now we're reading in your cafe, so don't complain about it. Like, how do you like create that understanding that just because there's people living in a van, that they don't eat at a restaurant as well and support the community in some way. And like, it's I know quite where I'm going with this, but yeah, I think it's such a broad topic with how people within the van life community, and it's super diverse, but how they can like help like create a better reputation for van lifers, and ensure that local communities realize that they're not 100% freeloading. They do contribute, they do go eat out, they do buy in the shops, and it's part of the community. They're not outsiders. They're not like people you can just blame for every piece of litter on the road. It's a challenge, I think, but I think it's a challenge which will come to head in the next sort of 10 years.
Yeah, and I want to see that community come together. That's one thing that I feel like I'm really passionate about. Is I don't care if you're like an older couple that's in a bus that's in like an $80,000, not bus, but like big Class A RV, or if you're in someone like in just your kind of self-converted, not even a Sprinter van, just like a regular van that
like a home van or something. It's all of it. Yeah.
You're all still the same community. And I think the more that grows, and that the entire kind of mobile life tiny home community sees itself as one, I think that's when we'll start seeing the kind of growth, and or maybe not just growth, but kind of the solidifying itself as kind of a staple, something that's here to stay. Because we can't go the way, I mean, especially in America, like we can't go the way that we've been going. Like you're right. Like you can work your entire life and still not have enough to own your own home, or to do anything.
It's not working. Yeah.
Not there's a system that's broken, and it is true that this is the hack that people have found that works. It's risky. It takes some, it obviously takes some getting used to in the beginning. It takes some kind of figuring out, planning how you're going to make money on the road, or whatever that may be. But I do believe it's growing, and I do believe that there's kind of changes on the kind of in the horizon, with maybe for people on the road, or people about to get on the road. How do you see this kind of, I would almost call it the Zoom revolution, like from the pandemic, we really saw that people are like, wait a minute, we don't need to work in offices anymore. Your computer from home is just as good. Do you have any tips out there for people that are maybe thinking of getting into it, but they're not sure how to maybe start, because obviously money on the road is the biggest, question people have.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's like, it's just, it's not about just quitting your job and then in a van. If you're looking at it as like, okay, I want to make money on the road, then you could have your job and then you start doing some like freelance gigs. If you can't just take your job on the road, or remote work or whatever, there's almost everything you have, which is maybe based on a computer, you can do from anywhere. Like, that's the reality. So there's loads of stuff you can do. And yeah, and then try and build it up if it's a thing, or just save like a big chunk of money. Like if you assume save $1,000 for every month you're on your road. It's not after you've got your van and it's not, you're not going to need loads and loads of repairs. And then you're like, okay, well, can I save a year's worth, and then I can get my thing going? Because I mean, I've done a lot of like different businesses in the past and like all sorts of different things, and you might in your mind, you're like, oh yeah, I'll do this and I'll quit and then I'll do this. But to do this, especially when you like have to meet, have calls with people or do some sales or whatever, that takes time. And it's like, it might be 6 months before you get your first invoice paid. So if you have that in mind, depends what you do. Like, if this is the thing, it's so hard to like advise for like how to like work when you travel, because some people just go to a place and they get some laboring job, like boom, done, and then they labor that job. Well, I saw some like thing the other day, and like people who work in Amazon warehouses as like van lifers turn up, work in the warehouse, get somewhere else. There's a lot of there's loads of options, but I think probably when people do like nomading, they're mostly thinking about people who are working from a computer. And then it's like, whatever service you're delivering, it's like, how do you build that up to a point it's sustainable, have a reasonable sense of like the business model, how much does it cost to acquire a client, how much might that client be worth over time, how do you do that process? And there's like, it's a whole can of worms. But mostly I would say like, be prepared, don't expect it to be instant. And like, if the aim is to make money on the road rather than just have a great holiday, then be mindful of it, and then do the things. Lots of tiny little steps will get you there. If you're trying to just have a holiday and like maybe sort out something on the road, then do that and just have it in mind. But just it's a difficult one to give blanket advice for.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I mean, I was thinking as you were saying that, even I work for a large company that they've got places all over, and there's quite a few people as we opened up that had traveled in their RV or their van that basically live full time in those, and have kind of not commuted, but kind of just decided to move here. And they'll probably take, and when another property opens up, they'll probably just take their bus and their RV and they'll go and and live at that one for the next. So there's different options. It doesn't have to be full time on the road. It might be full time from one company to another company in a different area. Or maybe if somebody is thinking of moving and they know, hey, in a year or a year and a half, I'm going to move to this area. Well, that might be a good way for you to start thinking about in advance, moving to a rig or a van or RV. And then, and a lot of those places, I think they'll give places to stay at first. And so, yeah, there's a lot of freedom that
there's like people who work. There's like people who like work offshore, then they come back, they earn really good money offshore. Now they can live 3 months in their van, they do another gig offshore. Or I know people who will like work 3 months in like summer in their home country intensely in like tourism, but they can get good money. And then like they travel a bunch, and maybe they do like a little bit of work somewhere they travel, which like gives them like free food and like parking spot or whatever. And it's just like part-time, like roofing or whatever that system's called. And then they travel a bit, and like you can just, there's so many different ways you can do it, and so many different options for work and jobs and processes. I mostly think most people can manage it. It's just like how they want to do it and the style that they're happy doing it in.
Yeah, and then luckily there's more for anybody out there. It only is a couple Google clicks away from finding out what options there are out there, what jobs are starting to do more and more online work, or what career fields are kind of switching over. But to kind of switch topics, just to go back to kind of climbing and future destinations and things like that, do you have any kind of upcoming things you're really excited about? Any upcoming destinations you really want to get to, or any climbs that you're really looking forward to?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, basically the last year, I was just working hard on the house. I've been climbing again now. This area is great. But at the moment we're kind of locked down to, well, right now to Catalonia, but it's like the best region in the world for sport climbing. So I think probably Monday we're gonna go and check out a lot of places in this area, which we've never been to because we can't get anywhere else. But it'll be great. But really, I'm just really looking forward to when things open up and I can travel again, because I really miss it, quite frankly. And I'd really like to go to some places in Asia. I don't know, there's maybe projects in Yosemite I'd like to get back on. But it's just really, when stuff opens up, I'm gonna go places, and it's gonna be amazing. And we're gonna, meet all the cool people you meet and have all those experiences. And then after that, I'll come back here and have a nice shower. It'll be great.
Well, man, awesome. Yeah, let me know if you come out to Yosemite. We're not too far away. We're pretty close. So hope you come out here to California and we can
Nice.
catch up one of these days. Well, Nate, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you?
You can find me on the YouTube channel, Nate Murphy. Yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Instagram, but I don't use it very much.
Okay.
So yeah, that's probably the best place to find me.
Well, awesome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a great chat. Really.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. This was a great chat. I think we got some good information out there for people that are kind of hoping to get into van life or thinking of, just kind of making a change for their life. So thank you again, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Peach Life Podcast. Next week, we're joined by Anthony Montalongo from Certified RV Solutions. This conversation is a great resource for both the new and experienced RVer.